Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today with week 69 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast, and we have a host of lots of guests this time. Lone and Noah sadly can't join us today, so would you all kindly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Carrick. I run ACG on YouTube. I am a reviewer mostly and do some technical discussions about video games and game design.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Peyton, otherwise known as Dogtooth CG, Fallout modder, most well known for making power armor.
Yeah. Cool.
Working on the Chinese stealth suit.
I saw that. Yeah, that's looking awesome, man.
Love that stealth suit. Hi, my name is Jonah. I am an ex-Bethesda dev. I was a character artist for 7 years at Bethesda, and now I do freelance work. At the moment, I'm working on the System Shock remake. I do a lot of live streaming on my own channel on Twitch, and as well as on the Adobe channel. And I'm writing a novel, and I have the first chapter up as of yesterday online.
Excellent.
Oh, cool. So I'll have a link to Carrick's channel, Peyton's mods, all their Twitter accounts, and Jonah, all your stuff as well. All will be down in the description box, so you guys should check all that awesome stuff out. We have a lot to talk about this week in Bethesda, and then we're going to do our general gaming discussion afterwards like we normally do, and then after that, it's a nice little Q&A with Jonah here, your celebrity guest. So let's roll into the Bethesda news roundup. Let's start off by talking about Prey. This is a game I'm very much anticipating because it just the premise behind it looks so cool, and they gave us some details. It was what seemed to be almost like a leftover interview from E3 actually, so that was actually surprising to see. But it seems like Bethesda's preparing for QuakeCon and kind of teasing a lot of things that are going to be there. And so first off, Rafael Colantonio said that it's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it has no tie with the original, and you have to look at it like a reimagining of the IP. He described the game as a hybrid of narrative meets action with a little bit of RPG. The arsenal in the game that you'll be using will be repurposed scientific gadgets. Also, the game will feature choice and consequence like Dishonored. It's not a horror game and more of a psychological thriller, and it's around the theme of identity, because a lot of people thought based off the trailer that it might be actually kind of horror focused with the type of monsters that are running at you. And lastly, they chose the name of the protagonist Morgan because it was a gender neutral name, since at the beginning of the game, I didn't know this, but you can actually select whether you want to be male or female, which I think is a cool choice, but I also think the idea behind that was interesting. So there's a load of details there to digest. Does anyone have any initial thoughts they want to dive into?
The only thing I want to add is it was weird how all that information came out like a bullet point. It's not this. It is this. It's this. It's not this. And when you read it, you're all, whoa! It's almost like they were on and on purpose, obviously, making sure that they answered some questions prior to them even being popped up. You know, sometimes you have to get out in front of things these days. So that was actually pretty cool. I actually liked it because you could read it and go, okay, gotcha. I got some info from that.
Yeah, I like that as well. What most interests me personally was that some people naturally are always going to be complainers, but I always like to acknowledge them because their arguments are interesting to me. Is that people are saying that if they're just reimagining the IP in general, it's not the same thing at all that what the original Prey was, then they're asking why call it Prey? And I guess that's a fair question, but also a slightly ridiculous one if I'm honest, because I think what they're trying to do is, since Prey was a series that I don't want to say never got off the ground completely, but you looked at Prey 1, decent amount of people liked it. I'd say it's like a cult classic in a sense. And then Prey 2 looked awesome. I think that was going to be the game that would bring in a lot of fans. And now I think since that got canceled and now they're doing Prey again, that I think what they're trying to do is just take their own vision and make Prey known for what they're doing, because it was never a huge series in the first place.
It's definitely one of those games that has a very particular look and feel, kind of no matter how it has changed from one kind of iteration or lack thereof. I remember I went to was it E3? Yes, it was E3 when the year was Skyrim came out, because obviously a lot of us wanted to be there, and we got to watch the Prey 2 live demo, and it was really cool. It was, and the look of it, the feel of it, it has this kind of Blade Runner-esque style of things, and so yeah, I don't know, it definitely makes sense that they would answer so many questions beforehand, because I know the moment I saw that, I was like,
yeah,
wait a second, is this thing been resurrected? Because afterwards, I remember they transferred over onto our network the kind of the cold, dead remains of this half-made game, and so my friend and I were poking around in it and jumping into different levels and just looking at like a test world and getting all close to the monsters and looking at the micro detail and just kind of being like, wow, it's such a shame that none of this saw the light of day. But maybe it's kind of like that the Quake kind of thing, Quake 1 and 2, where it's kind of like, well, there's no real similarity, but it's a great franchise, and jump in.
Or you could, Bethesda's not immune to financial situations as well. Calling it Prey helps. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but I also think that, critique backed by knowledge is fine. And so people asking that question, is Prey, can you use that name or should you? You've heard me probably say it, Matt, at times where I'm like, I'm not really quite sure if this company should use this name as they move forward. But what it is the overall theme of Prey will stay. And I don't mean theme like within the game, but if their inherent beliefs behind the system and behind the game that they're putting together are the same, they can call it Prey. Because they're trying to do something different with that. And like he said with Quake, and there's certain other titles where they really haven't had a lot compared to each other, but they're still in the title, the family title. It's almost like a redone car. It may look nothing like last year's model, right? But you still drive the damn thing. So in the end, call it Prey, right? I mean, financially, that's a big deal too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a familiarity kind of thing. And a lot of people are disappointed, myself included, with the cancellation of Prey 2. I was like, that game was amazing. I finally remember it. It's a weird story, but I think I've told this on the podcast. I had appendicitis at the time, and I was just chilling in the hospital room before my surgery, just watching all the shit I had missed at E3, and Prey 2 was one of them. And I was like, I can't wait for that. And never heard anything from it afterwards. So it's one of those games that after it got canceled and then re-revealed, I was like, I'm in. Let's get this done. I really like that they're adding choice and consequence to the game. What I found interesting, though, is that they compared it to Dishonored, which, to me, I was a little... Because Dishonored, the choice and consequence comes from the assassinations. You take someone out, or you choose not to kill them and do it in a non-lethal way, and that affects your ending. So I wonder what type of choice and consequence will be implemented into this game, especially around the theme of identity. Does that mean you're choosing who Morgan is in the sense of, a good or bad person, or is there just this gray area that you can't really find the right or wrong in? So I'm very interested how they're going to implement that.
We've seen a lot of games like that, like Dishonored, like the new Deus Ex, or Bioshock even for that matter, where there's these RPG-like elements and there's moral choices to make. By and large, I can't say I've been overwhelmed by the consequences of moral choices in all those games, even though I really loved all of those games. So maybe that's kind of what they're kind of throwing their hat in the ring with, like, it'll be fast paced, it'll be very first person oriented, you'll have a tree of skills to choose from and some moral decisions to make. But yeah, often when people say moral decisions, I'm kind of like, okay, sure.
Yeah. And don't you guys agree? We did a huge video on this a couple months ago because my personal belief is that almost every game we get now that talks about moral choice is like the three alleys in a MOBA. It's like black, white, and gray. But gray isn't really gray. Gray is just one half of one. It's like 0, 1/2, and then 1. Those are your overall things you can choose. And talking to developers at Activision on one of their games they're working on, it is under NDA, so I can't really speak about it. But they were talking about how many layers can you do. It's a very legitimate question. How many layers can you do in a voice acted game? And so we interviewed a voice actor one time. We were talking to him about his answers in certain games, and he has worked in a Bethesda game, by the way. And he was like, dude, even in a small game with just a couple alleys of choice with your dark Sith, your Jedi, and your middle ground, it's tremendous. And so sometimes I think gamers get negative, even myself, by the way. And it's like a legitimate money thing, because when you talk to voice actors, they're actually, they're under a union, there's all that kind of stuff, and it's incredibly expensive. So I think some companies just have to sit back and be like, we'll do it within the gameplay system. But it's interesting here, because it sounds to me like what you read, it sounds to me like it starts right at the starting with the identity crisis kind of stuff.
True, woman or...
And yeah, and so I was, when you were saying it, I was like, I wonder what that means if it's right at the starting, like...
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? It could be really cool.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, I agree. Peyton, what are you thinking about Prey?
I'm just really hoping that it takes a look at the ambiguity of morality, kind of along the lines that Selma took a look at what makes us human.
Okay.
Brain.
I haven't played that game before.
I haven't either, but I have watched so many Let's Plays of it.
And I'm the only person in the world who probably disliked it, but...
Really?
It's
really?
yeah, but I'm stupid. Like I know when a lot of people say a game's good. Like it wasn't for me. It was one of those things. But that game he's right. Like it's got a lot of cool morality in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this overarching competition between brain or body, soul or person, what makes you human. And I'm really hoping that Prey takes a serious look at that whole concept. It doesn't just give you evil.
You can definitely see, just from an outside look, a quick glance, I guess you could draw similarities in the terms of, at least from what Raphael's saying, and just a quick look at Soma, you can feel a tonal similarity. In my opinion. So I do hope they take a look at that. I'd say they'd be silly not to. The other thing we could quickly brush over is the arsenal and how they're going to be repurposed scientific gadgets. But we see in the trailer this monster going from like wall to wall, and he's got a loaded shotgun, and he's blasting away at them. So I wonder what these repurposed
science via shotgun.
Yep. So I'm wondering how that's going to go. But I'm happy that they're working on this game. And now it's for the next bit of news, which is about Doom. And I apologize, by the way, for the viewers who are watching on the video. I have to look down because since Lone and Noah aren't here, I can't send them the notes I wrote and have them read them off for me. So I have to write them on my phone, because on the other side is the recording software, and then I have Skype up in order to record the beautiful faces that are on screen. So yeah, it's a one-man circus here. So next is Doom's free update number 2 that's out right now, and it features some new multiplayer game modes, as well as new content in the snap map, as well as a host of fixes, such as bug stomping and all that stuff, and all the modes between single player, multiplayer, and snap map itself. The new modes, I believe they were like capture the flag and hold something else. I forgot what it was, but I think one was on sector or something like that. But yeah, they've added some new modes to maps as well, which was really nice to see. And they're doing a great job supporting this game. I really enjoyed Doom quite a bit. Everyone was kind of like a big fan of the story, and I think it's just, like you just said, Carrick, I think it was just me being me. I wasn't the biggest fan of the story and how it ended up, personally. I just don't, I'm not a cliffhanger guy, really. Yeah. So.
Do you know what I liked? I liked the in Doom. I felt I've been on the on my review. I basically talk about. I think it's one of the best FPSs that have come out in years. One of the best, not the best, but its slickness is almost parkour in first person, which just crazied me when I was playing it for review. I was like, this is the slickest moving game I have played in so long, and in rare times is that game that you can play where you don't blame the game occasionally with a death. You're like, you know what? Damn it, that was not me. That was like I got caught on something, or a collision box. Man, Doom is slick. I mean that, and slick with some substance, right? It's not just like slick. It looks good. It's slick, and it has some insane level design. So I'm stoked. I have a question for you, Matt. Didn't they replace the team working on MP with a different multiplayer team?
That's an interesting question, because I was wondering the same thing when the same team that made Doom announced that they're working on Quake Champions. Right. I'm like, you just finished Doom. How are you already working and have stuff ready to show for Quake Champions at QuakeCon? So I'm imagining that what you're saying is true. That would be the only reasonable explanation, but I actually haven't heard that. I've been wondering it myself. So I don't know if any of you guys, Peyton or Jonah, have heard anything about that. Nada? All right.
I don't know much about multiplayer. I played a little bit of Doom multiplayer. I think like it's always been the very cool thing to like be like Doom or Quake multiplayer, like id multiplayer, like it's a frag fest. Like they really didn't invent that, but I had never actually been so enamored by the multiplayer that they've offered in any of their games recently. But the single player experience in Doom was, I totally agree with you. It was spectacular, and the movement, the fluidity. There were no collision box deaths. There were no ridiculous physics. It ran butter smooth on my 6-year computer. Incredibly high frame rate. Most beautiful thing ever. Fluid. They had really mastered what made the original. It's funny because for years I kind of had this slowly declining view of id games just because something like Half-Life had come into the world and revolutionized things and presented the same first-person shooter experience that we've come to expect, plus, right?
Yeah.
And so when I bought Doom 3 in college, I was really excited, and I installed it, and I played it, and I had fun, and it did a lot of things right, but it didn't, for some reason do it for me. Doom 4 shocked me, and it was like, wow, you actually, instead of adding more, you just tripled down on the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you made the best, most fun, frenetic shooter with like the best gore, the most satisfying weapons, demons that are like, following me everywhere, a soundtrack that was as metal as hell. And it crashed for me, I think, once, and I played it through once on hard and once on nightmare, and it just crashed once the whole time. And I was like, that is
that's pretty sweet.
You know? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, the only issue, like I said, I had was, because I'm a narrative guy in general, so like even if it's, a lot of people were saying in my review, they were like, I respect your views, but it's Doom. And I'm like, well, you look at Wolfenstein as a good example of a game series that you just had a guy who killed Nazis. Really wasn't an important protagonist. And then, with the New Order, they made him a really good protagonist and surrounded him with a fantastic supporting cast that really made the experience that much better. So I was wondering, if you could do that with just a Nazi killer, then maybe you could do that with Doom.
I think you're. Oh, I'm sorry. I know you said it because you make a really good point. I played Wolfenstein as well, and I also played Wolfenstein twice. And by the way, I don't play games very often twice, especially narrative-driven games, unless there's branching possibilities.
Yes.
They transformed B.J. Blazkowicz into like a really lovable character, and like all the other sub-characters were fantastic. The gunplay was amazing. The story was really good. You know what I think the defining difference, though, for me is Wolfenstein, when you play Wolfenstein 1, you load up the game and you're in a prison cell and you just kill the guard. There's a dead guard at your feet. And the whole point is escape from Castle Wolfenstein. So you're already you already feel outnumbered, outgunned. You feel like the small guy. You're the guy with nothing. And here are the Nazis, and the Nazis, we all know the Nazis, and yes, this is a fictional version of the Nazis, but the Nazis are terrible, right? And then in Doom, what I loved about Doom 4 is that they took the same, maybe invisible spirit of the game, and they refined that. And to me, the spirit of the game is not, there's somebody you care about at home that you're saving from the demons or this and that. I think Doom is the ultimate power trip, where basically you're having the most fun in that game when you're just running, gunning, and slaughtering huge monstrosities that are all coming at you in waves. And I think they took that almost to this comical degree, which I thought they basically embraced it. So that you open up the game, you start the game, you pull yourself out of chains, and then you see your own armor embedded in like meteorite rock. That's how tough you are. You put on this armor, you look at your hands in the game, and from an artistic standpoint, yes, there's the armor, there's the metal armor, but it's got this leather under armor as well. And you are almost a demon yourself. And then throughout the game, you are just pile up bodies and pile up bodies and pile up bodies, and the main characters start referring to you as, just like you are a killer. That's all you do. You kill. Like what's his name says, the bad guys are coming. You'll have a fight on your hands. And then he chuckles and says, "But I expect that's what you want." And you're like, "Yeah, that's all I want in the game." And then and I thought they took it to a lovely, funny degree where, at times, whenever what's his name, Hayden, is that right? Samuel Hayden. He says on your intercom, now delicately interface with this computer and do this thing. And not once in the game do you do that. You just answer it with your fist, and you just explode whatever you're working on. And it's the only language you speak. And so I totally agree. I'm sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, by all means.
I feel very passionately about these games. And I think that's why I'm glad they didn't try to humanize you. In fact, they made you the greatest of all demons, and then they just unleashed you on hell.
That's an interesting standpoint, yeah. That's actually, it's pretty eye-opening when you put it that way. When, yeah. Totally
I heard
argument irrelevant. So
I heard somebody at E3. We were talking to. Was it E3? No, I can't remember where it was. It might have been on a podcast. We were talking to somebody, and they said it is funny that in Doom, because I do believe that technically, when they say bad guys are coming, a good one-liner for that would have been, "But the bad guy's already here," because you are. And what somebody had said that it reminded them of the Master Chief being called Demon by the Grunts. So in Master Chief and Halo, they're constantly calling him, "Here comes the demon." Like they have their own myths and stories. And the weird thing is these guys are demons, but you are quite literally destroying entire legions of demons.
Yeah.
And there's this cool bit. I mean, like you get that cool feeling in Doom. Like I wonder if they're telling stories about me. Like you guys are going to tell stories about how awesome I am, and that's the power trip of Doom, right?
Well,
like that's
exactly.
That's what it
touch
is.
those rune stones throughout the game, and they have a deep voice, gravelly man talk about how terrible you were, and how basically every imp child cowers in its crib thinking about you, the Doomslayer.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's very cool.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's more so for me. Okay, here, if I really did have one complaint, I would rather say it wasn't. Definitely, a cliffhanger bothered me. Okay, but that's kind of irrelevant when you have such a fun game like Doom. I love the hell out of it. I think it was more so that, and a lot of people said like you just need the carrot dangled in front of you the whole time. Is that they give you like awesome weapon after awesome weapon and all these cool upgrades and stuff, and then for the last, I'd say 4 hours, they essentially set you up in your toy box and then let you go.
Yeah, they peter out a little bit.
Yeah, and the last weapon you get that's big, and I wouldn't say this is a spoiler, is the BFG, the big fucking gun that literally just decimates a room full of demons. And after that, you don't get these cool weapons that kind of kept you progressing. And I felt like that was a core part of what made the story fun, is because you're just like, I just keep getting badder and just, or rather, I keep getting worse. And, just more threatening to these demons. And, like you guys said, are they telling stories about me? You find out they kind of are. Is that I think they're realizing that vision when they're constantly giving you these new weapons of destruction. And then when they kind of pull the plug on that and have you running around hell for 4 hours, just, getting to that final boss fight, I feel that's where the game starts to taper off a little bit personally. But that doesn't take away from the experience at all, because I've said through and through it's a fantastic game. You should not skip out on it. Especially because Bethesda's been so generous with the deals for this game. They've kept discounting it, and they gave away the first level for free to say, like, hey, look how awesome this game is. They could. You've had your chance to play this game. If you haven't yet, you're doing yourself a disservice. Doom is awesome. Especially because the multiplayer is fun, too. So, there's that, too.
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't played it, but how do you guys think it stands up to the original, just feel-wise?
It's
definitely got a similar speed.
That's what I said in the review. I felt that speed was pretty close. I think the original might be a little faster, maybe, but as I programmed WADs for the originals, so like I spent a lot of time with the originals, and I think they were. It's close, man. It's awesome. I mean, it feels really, really good when it comes to movement. And I think the original Doom. That's what I liked about the original Doom, was the movement was fun. So
yeah. You'd probably like it, Peyton, because you're a moderate, and they have the snap map mode, and you can make some really crazy levels with them. I've goofed around in snap map myself, and it's like it's intuitive in the sense where it's like on the surface level you look at it, you're like, okay, I get this, and then there's like 40 different layers beneath that are like, okay, you want to get complex, here you go, here are the tools, and they keep adding more to it. That was part of the update that I just mentioned in the little news bit, is that they did add I think like 25 new things to build with.
Cool.
So. And a couple of backgrounds as well, so that's nice that they're constantly supporting this game. But speaking of id, we also have details on Quake Champions. You guys have been talking about Quake a lot, so you actually might have to take the reins for this conversation, because to be completely honest with you, I've never played Quake in my life. That might be because I am a smidge, like I was born, like during those times, so I don't think I was at the proper age to actually play these games, I'd say. Or I was just never really introduced to them as I got older. But anyway, the details for Quake Champions. So they have champions or the game's heroes. So you could, if you want to draw a recent comparison, I guess you could think Overwatch, where you have that squad of heroes that have their own unique abilities. But players can naturally pick up any weapon of their choice on the map. When a champion dies and drops it, you can pick that up. So you're not really necessarily locked into that class and can't change it up whatsoever. Also, there were 4 champions that were highlighted inside of this article. The first ones, or rather the 4 they listed, were Ranger, Visor, Nyx, and Scalebearer. And Ranger was playable in the first ever Quake, and he has a Dire Orb, which allows him to teleport. Then there's Visor from Quake 3 Arena, and he will be able to see enemies through walls and other barriers. Nyx is a new champion who is new and faster. And then there is... Oh, he can actually also phase to nearby locations, becoming invincible for a short period of time. And lastly is the Scalebearer, who is another newcomer, naturally, and can use a Bull Rush ability. So it seems they're, from what I'm getting from this, based off the title Quake Champions, and then you see that they're bringing back some from the original, correct me if I'm wrong, but some from the original, some new ones. It's almost like a celebration of Quake in a sense, where it's like, let's get all these badass characters from all these games to face off in Quake Champions. Am I interpreting that properly? Because it seems to be like a multiplayer focused game with based off the cast that they're starting to announce now. Is that accurate or?
Yeah, I mean, everything I've seen, that is, but I just don't think they've announced enough for us to really get. I mean, I've only seen the one trailer and then a couple little announcements. So I will say one thing. What you said just really excited me out of the blue, which I didn't know. When you said the idea that you start as one character, but you can pick up other people's weapons. When I play Overwatch, I always wonder what it would be like to have my skills with the other people's weapons. So if you can do that, the idea of like maybe finding one or two weapons you really like that aren't owned by your starting character, but you maybe get a synergy when you're working with your own weapon and your own skills, that could be fantastic. Because one problem with Overwatch that I have is that I won't say it's long in the tooth, but I do find myself not returning to it as much as I thought I was going to.
Interesting.
So the idea, and that's because I think it's the same stuff, right? You've got the same weapons. Like you're not, so that would be cool to me. That's, I don't know. And you just read that. That's the first I've ever heard of that. So
yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm nearing 60-ish hours on Overwatch, which I know a lot of people have me way beat out on that. But for me, kind of like what Jonah said, where I don't return to games twice. For me, when it's a multiplayer only game, like a good example would be Battlefront. That was my childhood, Battlefront 1 and 2, as well as the ones on the PSP. I played those so much, and I thought, like, regardless of Battlefront on the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, if that's good or bad, I'm going to play that a lot because I love Battlefront, and I did.
Me too.
But with Overwatch, this game just keeps pulling me back. Like, I play it so much, and multiplayer-only games don't do that, especially ones like Overwatch where you could argue that, I don't know how to word it. It's not a lack of content because the heroes have so much focus that they're almost game modes in their own right because you play them so vastly differently. But, you look at the amount of modes and maps they have, and you could argue there's a lack of content here. And to a degree, there definitely is. But I don't know. It's a game that constantly pulls me back. So that's why Quake Champions has me interested because now when I hear, like, oh, we have a cast of heroes, and I like what they're doing here where they're bringing back some originals, it sounds like, but also introducing new ones, and it's going to be like the ultimate Quake deathmatch in a sense. Anyone else here played some Quake? I know, Jonah, you mentioned Quake earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely played Quake 1 a lot back in the day. And then I played Quake 2. And then, in a surprise twist, I played Quake 3. No, I never played Quake Territory. I really appreciate what they're doing here. They're kind of taking, what was that Warcraft MOBA? Or they're basically taking all the Blizzard cast of characters and creating a Dota, like a MOBA out of it. What was that one called?
Oh, man. Is it Heroes of the Storm or?
Heroes of the Storm. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're trying to kind of cash in on franchise recognizability. But I don't know much. This is the first I've actually heard about it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I've not been paying so close attention. And actually, shoot 'em ups online used to be my bread and butter. And these days, Dogtooth Peyton knows this a lot, but I give myself tendonitis making Alduin for Skyrim, and what it ended up doing is that I just can't play a competitive video game for longer than a couple days in a row because I think I click really hard,
Okay.
I get really into it. I can play for hours. So I've actually I've told myself that I'm not allowed to play Overwatch because I can tell that it's like Team Fortress or something, and I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I can totally lose my life to that. And I just can't do that right now.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That makes sense. What about you, Peyton? Play Quake?
I played Quake 3 when I was younger, but I honestly don't play a whole lot of games.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just in the dark as you guys. Like, there was just that one initial trailer at E3, and then this thing of details, and I'm like, oh, this is a decent amount. This is worth talking about. But I think they're apparently going to be, and naturally, it's QuakeCon, so it makes sense. But apparently, they're going to be showing off exclusive gameplay there, which would likely be similar to what they did with Doom, where they're going to just shut down the live streams and let people at the show watch it exclusively, which will piss people off, but makes sense. I think it's important that they do that type of stuff to keep conventions alive and thriving and all that stuff.
And I am very...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I am very excited for the new Quake, even though I'm not really a huge fan of the series.
I'm curious about it, so I
yeah.
think I'm on the same page as you, where it's like, I don't know. I really don't know a thing about Quake other than it sounds like a multiplayer shooter. I know that's probably sad to say because it sounds like one of the originals, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so, I'm a piece of shit, I know. But it's just, I'm curious what it's going to be like. So it might be one of those games that I just keep myself intentionally in the dark on. Anytime I see like a headline for it, I'll just be like, okay, whatever, I'm just going to scroll by this and not read up on it because I think that helps you enjoy games a lot more, if I'm honest. If you just, I don't want to say, because there's like a limit, when you know too much about a game. I think I did that with Fallout 4 because I just looked into every single fucking thing. But that's just me, personally. Speaking of Fallout 4, the last piece of news that we have this week is the Vault-Tec Workshop, which just dropped this week. Did you actually... I don't think you did because it came out this year. You didn't work on this, right, Jonah?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So, anyone have a chance to play this one yet?
I have that bug that doesn't allow me to start it. So there's
Really?
there's a lot of people reporting that there's a particular bug where you can't get to an item. And Cadiz, the other guy on my channel, was like, "Yeah, I have this issue," and I'm all, Psh, "I'm sure I can get through it," because that never happens to me. I load it up. First thing that happens is I can't get to the start point. So I haven't been able to play it yet, but
Really?
I'm sure they'll patch it. Yeah, I'm excited to try it out because I left Fallout 4 for a long time, so I want to jump back in. But yeah, so I haven't got to see it at all.
So, have you played Far Harbor yet, then, or...?
I basically made sure it would work and run, and that was it. I have to step away for No Man's Sky, a couple other
absolutely.
games, and then go back to it.
I'm with you on that. Trying to keep my schedule clear and so I can review games as well. But yeah, have you played Vault-Tec Workshop, Peyton?
No, that's the only one I don't have thus far. I don't know how I feel about it. We talked about it last weekend.
Yeah.
It seems a little bit.
It seems light in content, Peyton?
Not necessarily in content, but in context. You've got this quest line for it, which is really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the vault was never completed, and then you end up with a functioning vault door and what I can tell a repurposed capsule tile set, which that's not a vault.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's like a Vault-Tec hangout.
Yeah, for me, it's I think what the issue I had with the DLC is because technically you could argue it's probably the I want to say the best, but you could say it's the most attractive option for the settlement DLC. But for me, I've personally just had my fill of the settlement mode. I'm very traditional in the sense where when I look at Oblivion, Fallout 3, Skyrim, Fallout 4 even, it's like I like to go on the new adventure. And I know that takes more time, resources, money, all that stuff. So that's why I kind of understand why they're trying to balance that out with the settlement DLC, because that's easier. That allows you to get content out at a quicker pace, keep fans interested while you're working on the bigger picture. But for me, I think I was just at a period while playing it where I was just kind of the switch had been off. I was just like, I can't get into this. So I beat the quest line, and I built a couple of vaults. It's definitely fun. There's a lot of new assets, which is pretty cool. Obviously, you've probably seen most of them when you explore the vaults in Fallout 4. But it's nice to build your own. It makes settlements a really interesting thing because if you have all the DLC, then you can build facilities that produce ammo. You can build the ball and track pit. You can build vaults now. You can have Deathclaws be companions. You can have gorillas walking around your settlements. You can have arenas, and then you have all this stuff in the base game. It's like, okay, settlements have gone too far. There's just so much there. It's awesome. I enjoy it personally, but I think I've always said that I like the focus to be on the I guess the way to say it is what I like about Fallout. But I know it's popular. It's such a mixed bag on the settlement mode because I made a discussion video about it because I remembered while I was editing a video that Todd Howard had said that settlement mode would be optional, but obviously everyone's for the most part played Fallout 4, where it was like, well, at the end of the game, to get to the Institute, you need the settlement mode, and then this optional mode that people were like, okay, I like this, but it needs work. When it came to DLC, it just kept getting more assets, not fixes to what I thought were issues, and I think that's the good thing about Vault-Tec Workshop is that it addressed one of the issues, which was settlements should have quests to make people compelled to build and help out what's going on here, so that when you're looking at that rebuild the wasteland vision that Bethesda has for Fallout 4, that's what you're doing in the Vault-Tec Workshop DLC, where you're conducting experiments, you're realizing this dream that Overseer I forgot, someone with a B, had, and I think that was the cool part. Although you could argue, oh, it's just get this item, bring it back, and then, conduct this experiment, see what happens. It was, it kept the settlement itself interesting, because I was, excited to go back out into the world, pick up some new items, and build more, because I had a good, compelling reason. Where in the base game of Fallout 4, and I apologize for the long-winded thing right here, but with Fallout 4, I felt with the settlement mode that you had a great idea. It's still a fun idea. It's just that you needed that one last bit to compel most players, to keep them interested in what is the best part about a Fallout game, which is the characters and the questing. So I've always said this to the point where I'm sure my viewers are sick of it, but I've always said, each settlement should have had their own unique settler that you got at a certain point when you did something specific at the settlement, and then from there they'll show up, maybe give you a unique item or give you a quest because they've been attracted to your settlement. They're like, hey, I came from New York, we'll say, for example, because I heard about your settlement. And, they'll say, I got this cool idea for Boston that I wanted to try out, and I needed your help because I heard that you were the guy to go to because you've been bringing hope to all these people. And I think that's a way it could have expanded. But
that's actually a good answer, but that's something you and I talked about prior to the last podcast too, was holistic world design is actually not done quite often. So a lot of times there's just, especially DLC, it's just thrown out there sometimes, and you're like, why should I even investigate this? There's no real pull to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that does happen quite often, unfortunately. And it happens in games too, where you get it. We just did a video on Thief 4, well, whatever you call it. Is it Thief 4? Or is it just Thief? What did they call that?
Just Thief, but...
Absolutely terrible level design. One of the worst level designs I've ever seen in my life. And it was...
That's terrible, because that's one of those games where it has to be... The level design has to be specifically great.
Yeah, and one of the worst... are you guys going to argue with me? Sorry. I don't want to... I entered a spot in that game recently, and I was like, wow, this is a Thief game. And it's quite literally got me by the nose like a bull, and it's dragging me around the level and telling me with audio cues exactly where to go, with visual cues exactly where to go. It's a complete loss of the holistic worldview that a person is experiencing the world versus being told about it. There's a huge difference. And that game, and many games, and Fallout has this occasionally, Skyrim had it sometimes too, where you have that moment where you're being told exactly where to go, or the opposite, like you said, where there's no reason to go there. There's just nothing there. You're like, why am I experiencing this? There's nothing here. And there's no pull for people to go to it. And it's sad. Yeah,
I mean, I know some people will argue for me about Fallout 4 settlement mode is that, the DLC's optional, you don't have to do that.
For sure.
You don't have to buy the season pass. Absolutely, but I make Bethesda videos. I'm obviously going to buy it, so I think that gets rid of that bit of the argument. But another argument would be, well, it's just there for fun. It absolutely is fun. It's just that, with anything that, I think the beauty of DLC, a lot of people like to shit on it, but for me, the beauty of DLC is you're getting this direct feedback from the consumer after your base product is, released into the public. So you got to interpret all that feedback. What are we seeing people like and don't like? And if you see people like the settlement mode, but don't like the lack of a reason to go there and start building, I don't think the fix was to give us more items to build with. That would just get us in there. Okay, let's see what this is. All right, that's great. I'm off in an hour. With questing, though, and I don't mean to just keep beating a dead horse here, but I'm just saying with questing, I think that was if they released a settlement quest pack, 30, because I think there's 32 settlements or something like that in Fallout 4. And if they went 30 new settlement-focused quests that bring in unique settlers, characters to meet, and items into the game as well as quests, that would have been cool, I think. Because, that would have been a natural expansion of the game, because I always think when you're making DLC as well, you might want to keep in mind that when someone's playing the game, maybe a year from now, they buy the complete edition or the special edition, and they see this game, that it's a natural expansion of what's happening. I think Automatron did that well. And so I think a settlement quest pack was something that, you know, wouldn't even almost phase the gamer while they're playing it, because, you know, they'd be playing the settlement mode and be like, okay, it makes sense that someone special would show up here because I put so much time into this area.
I was just going to say it reminds me of cosmetics in an MMO. That's what the workshop is to me. It's just in the DLC. Whenever you talk about items, it reminds me of cosmetics. It's just there. It's great. It's there. You can make it look cool. Instead of dressing up your character to look like a schoolgirl, you can dress up your place to look like a school. And to me, that's not really incredibly exciting. Like, it's great that people get it, but it doesn't excite me to use it, if that makes sense. Like, I might look at it, but it's too bad.
Yeah, there's definitely when the planning goes into any kind of DLC, you know, of course, the first couple DLCs released after a game are kind of pivotal. They have to keep the revenue stream going. They have to kind of keep people active and keep people talking about it. And then I think when you reach an area like here, it's not so much like, look at this like great pull. It's much more like, well, we have these things, we have these tools, we have these ideas. It's easy for just a couple people to do work on this, and then we get to keep giving to the community, because I think that's, and you know, and it's always been, I think that your point about getting those settlements to feel like there's a personal touch to them is definitely critical. I guess the problem we come to here is obviously the inevitable problem of, here's a continent to explore. How do we possibly fill it with substantive things? You know, I worked on Fallout 4 for 9 months before I left and moved to New York. And so playing the game was super fun to me, and it felt super new, and it was the first game since almost like Morrowind that I hadn't been involved with in some way, or at least I was minimally involved with that. So I guess I was very involved in it before I left. But the question there has always been one of how do you make the experience as sandboxy as possible? And so for instance, I didn't even know that Preston Garvey would just spit out quests like that, because for a while I thought that this was like the Thieves Guild, and I would just keep talking to him, and I would be like leveling up. And
somebody else did that. Okay, thank you. I did that as well. All right, cool.
So and here's the thing is there's nothing wrong with Preston Garvey as his character, except that he won't even give you a break. He's always assigning you something new. But also they put him in like the main hub, so he simultaneously does what he's supposed to, which is, I stand here and I call you general, and I'm a provider of content. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, once you realize, what I'm doing is a Radiant quest, and the settlement that I'm building is filled of Radiant settlers, you're right. It does. You do lose a personal connection, and you lose a reason to care, because ultimately, these people are literally just like everybody else. But then it's this kind of balance, right? Because also at the same time, and people say this a lot, but people also may not appreciate just how small Bethesda is.
Oh, I'm 100% on board with that. I always tell people that. They're like, oh, bullshit. I'm like 100 people, man. Like, they do big games for their size.
Totally. I mean, you have a game like Assassin's Creed, for instance.
Thousands of people.
Assassin's Creed, that's 4 times as large as the Bethesda team. And they're making a much smaller game in many ways. Not in every way, but in many ways. And it's a polish versus breadth kind of experience. And I think that I can definitely speak to, previous DLCs that we've created for Fallout 3, for Oblivion, for Skyrim and Fallout 4, although I didn't work on any of the Fallout 4 expansions. It's a mix between, we have a couple designers here who have a really great idea, and they're heading the team here, and there's a couple of artists assigned to them, and they're all going to work together and provide this content, down to more smaller teams where, at this point I imagine there's not that much Fallout 4 work to be done, because the Fallout 4 hubbub is getting quieter and quieter. Of course, we have, I think, the last DLC to go. Yes. And I will go into that more later, and I can't give away any information, but I just know that it's going to be good. I know who's working on it, and I know the general feel of the route they're taking. And I feel like that's a really great example of giving people time to create substantive information and work over time. But with Bethesda, it's always been this: how do we fill the land with real meaning and real characters, and at the same time, how much do we just give them sandboxy entertainment for sandbox's sake? Because I think that's so much of what Bethesda is about. The open world game, it's a sandbox. You pick a direction, you just start walking, and you have adventures. And so I think with an expansion like this, I can totally understand how people could be a little disappointed. But keep in mind, it's also one of those situations where, and I'm not talking to you guys, I'm talking to just everybody. Just keep in mind that that's a situation where, they have this stuff. They had a couple passionate designers who wanted to do just this one thing. And what are they going to do? Like, not release that? So they definitely still want to get it out there because there's still people who will love it. But I also at the same time, I imagine a lot of the team is moving on to whatever next thing is going on.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the one thing that a lot of people, and I want to say it's got to be selective forgetfulness is what I enjoy calling it, because gamers love doing that to further their arguments, is that I used to run a wishlist series, and I don't say that that's the end-all, be-all of, what Fallout fans wanted. But when I sit down and I look at that playlist I have, it's a long playlist of videos because I made that series for many years, weekly, sometimes, multiple videos a week. And one of the most requested features was build a city, build a town, build a settlement, build this, build that. People wanted this. They got it. I think that the implementation of the building was done well. I remember, once again, selective forgetfulness. I remember sitting at E3 when they introduced the settlement mode for Fallout 4 and lost my mind. I was like, thank God they're doing this.
Right.
And then I think it's just a matter of implementation and execution. And I think they did a lot of things right with it.
Well.
Yeah, that as well. But the other thing that I think people should appreciate is that they're taking chances with an established franchise, and that's not easy. It's not easy to take a series that's been around since '98, I think, and change it that drastically. Where if you were an original Fallout player back then, and then you look at it now, the voice protagonist was a big jump. The settlement mode, big jump. And I think I admire them more for stepping out of the comfort zone, for saying, hey, let's try this, and maybe screwing it up a little bit, which is frustrating as a gamer, arguably, but at least they tried. They know, okay, we might want to do, maybe we'll say hypothetically, of course, let's say there's an Elder Scrolls 6. Okay, we'll do the settlement mode again, but this time we know people want more substantive content in that settlement mode, so we'll do that, So I think it's good that they take these chances because I know Todd Howard said the team likes to think in the long term. They like to think way down the line with things where it's like, okay, this may not have worked, but when we fix it and get it just right to what they want, that in our next game, it'll be just right. And I think that's a good way of, approaching things in a game design is that, if someone would try to argue that Fallout 4 could be a bad game, say that in quotes, because I personally, I'm not just saying this because Jonah's here, I've said time and time again, I don't think Fallout 4 is a bad game. But if you could argue that since Morrowind that they've made one bad game, then I'd say that's a good track record to have as a game designer, personally. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of another video game designer that's maybe like Valve is one of those, like, they just churn out hits. But
Activision, of course.
But then again, but it's funny also because again, Valve, Blizzard, these are giants, still compared to Bethesda. I think, I totally agree with you. And I think that, especially from the perspective of a developer, when you hear about the initial ideas of a game and you're looking forward to the game and you can't wait to sink your teeth into this next game, you immediately begin to dream and think of things that could happen and things that would, wait, check this out, I got the best idea. We all have ideas that are spectacular, and when you are on that dev team and you're trying to work on this game, you just want to do them all. So I get it, and there's going to be a million cuts. There's going to be a million little darlings that are just going to have to be murdered over the course of the career of that, or over the course of that game. So speaking as a developer, I definitely I will defend Bethesda to the end, but at the same time, I know exactly anything that the player is frustrated about regarding the series. Like, I'm even more frustrated, and I think most of the developers at Fallout were, but just because it's your own thing, you're working so hard, the expectations are so high, and there's just going to be you're not going to get things right, but I think that as with anything that you can imagine and then create later, there's this gap between your expectation and the result, and hopefully, the result will never meet your expectation. You'll never be what you thought it was going to be or that you hoped it was going to be. But the best you can hope for is that the sum total of what you created is something new and cool and different and of its own style. And so I think that, for Skyrim, for instance, 6 months before release, the team was in a panic because there was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of feeling like things were going very badly and that we had made some major miscalculations on a number of levels and that, how can we possibly salvage this? And we worked so hard for months and months and months, and those of us who weren't programming or doing art were just playtesting constantly and just taking notes. And in the end, I don't know how we did it. We pulled it together into a game that's pretty respectable,
Gosh, yeah.
and definitely left an impression. But as with any, if you were to ask me how Skyrim turned out, I would say really great in many ways, and not so great in many ways. There's more disappointments that of that game that I can possibly articulate, and yet at the same time, it is a classic game. You know what I mean? So you never quite know what you're going to get. You're just going to pour your blood into it and your sweat. And I think gamers are always right to have an opinion about a game, especially if it's not a good one. I've expressed multiple ill feelings regarding multiple games that I love just during the course of this podcast. Quake and Doom and things like that, where there was so many shortcomings and yet something amazing was created. So I think that the passion of the community really does drive the developers, and the developers work hard. And the only thing I will ever say to fans of any kind is that the things that happened that you didn't like about this game, no one tried to make it shitty for you, and nobody was ever lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys were in crunch mode for like a year and a half before the game ended, and they didn't have to be. They worked so hard, and I think a lot of them. I just know how much blood and sweat and tears went into these games, and certainly. And that should never stop anybody from critiquing a game, because a game, like anything else, is a work of art, and you can pour your blood, sweat, and tears into things, and then step back and be like, "Oh, that's a piece of shit filled with blood, sweat, and tears." Like it happens. Yeah. But that's the only element that I would ever defend to my dying breath. Is like, "Oh, they were too stupid or lazy." No, it's never those reasons why something went wrong. So yeah.
No, that's an interesting way of incorporating feedback, because you think, for me, I'll admit it, I've generally gone soft at times on Bethesda, and my viewers have made me well aware that there are some videos I've made in the past where I have been a little too soft on what I've had to say, but sometimes I think that softness from myself and many other YouTubers comes from because firsthand, because of this podcast, I've had the privilege to be able to talk to people who've worked on games such as yourself, and you hear the passion in their voice. You see firsthand them not trying to bullshit you like, all right, this is a good PR spiel. Like, you're freelance. You really don't have any investment in Bethesda to the point where obviously you have a job to do and stuff, but you could sit here and just essentially trash them, but you're choosing not to, obviously, because you respect them. But also, as a YouTuber, sometimes you go soft on these companies, or soft in the public's eyes, because you just generally appreciate the hard work that goes into that, and the way that you see somehow the community, sometimes the way the community responds to certain things in games, how harsh they can be.
But I think that's also I don't actually think you're being soft. I think that's critiquing with knowledge. There's a complete difference between, and I wouldn't even agree in many ways with it. Jonah was saying that everybody has a valid complaint, or that's not exactly what he said, but I just don't think that at all. I think that you need to do your due diligence first when you purchase a title, right? You need to wake up. You need to go, I'm going to spend $60, so I need to know at least somewhat what I'm getting. That's the first thing. But when you do get it and you complain because it doesn't have underwater submersibles and the developers had no plan of putting it in there, does that person have a valid complaint? And would you be soft on it if you didn't say so? And the problem is that is that everybody has this feedback, and it's awesome that like Bethesda's listening all the time, and that's great. But I also at times feel bad for developers, because in my videos at the end I always say no developer woke up and said let's make a shitty game. That's like the end line of the reviews. And the reason why I say that is because it makes no effing sense that they would. But you will get people saying that. So I don't think you go, dude, I've watched your videos. Like, it may appear like you're going soft, but what's really going on is maybe you're not explaining where your information is coming from, right? Your knowledge of what's going on in the background.
You take into account, I hate saying this because like Lone and Noah pounded into my head that I make it sound like I'm bragging. Obviously, they're being sarcastic, but
you're bragging.
When I met Todd Howard at E3, it was just a genuine one-on-one conversation with him about the game, how things are going, and it wasn't, at least with Bethesda. I've seen it as well firsthand. I'm sure you have, Carrick, that as a YouTuber, you sometimes get that PR bullshit spiel. Yeah. And you can tell they're trying to butter you up. With Bethesda, they're very real with you. And so for me, when I see that, and if they've come out and admitted their mistakes, I don't have to call them out on it usually. They are usually the first to step up and say, yeah, we did this wrong. A good example would be the voice protagonist. They didn't say they did it wrong, but they said that was a misstep. And they don't have to go out of their way to say, hey, community, we hear you. You didn't like that your character was voiced, and they could have just sat on the money, sat on the opinion, and just been like, well, whatever, we got their money. But instead they chose to acknowledge the community, their complaints, and say, hey, we misstepped here, but here's how we're going to fix things. And I think that is admirable. And I think and not just Bethesda, but a general respect for game developers should be in place. Because when I talked to another great talk I had at E3 this year was with Lauren Lanning, creator of the Oddworld series. And, he said that he actually has a very interesting standpoint on game development, because and it was interesting talking to him, especially because Oddworld Munch's Odyssey was, I believe, my first ever video game. So it was really cool to talk to him and hear how he was like, yeah, game development's not fun at all. He's like, there's nothing fun about it. And how, you're always nervous, especially around launch time and all that stuff. So, and he said how the average work span is usually like 5 years, and then someone will back out of their job and go try something else. And so, when he mentioned all this type of stuff, it was like, wow, these, you're as me, myself, and you guys as well, we all know there's people on the other end working at this game, but a lot of people who are bashing out these internet comments don't think of that, hey, someone might be checking out, for example, a Fallout 4 dev might be looking at my video and seeing these comments about Fallout 4, and someone just might be vicious for no reason because they had a bad day, and not think of the repercussions that can have and echo into the development team. So I think there needs to be a greater respect put out there. But then again, it's the internet. Can't really control it too much, but I think that some people can be a little more self-aware when they're writing the stuff they do.
That really does speak to me, because, you go into the time machine and you go back to Fallout 4's launch. There was so much demonization of Bethesda. Just overwhelmingly so. They showed a whole crap load of features at E3 that were all included. I can't recall anything that was cut right off the top of my head.
True. And
that's what we saw, and that's what we got. And then everyone comes out of the woodwork just saying that this is the worst developer on the planet. That they lied to us, that old lies mean. And it's just, I have yet to see any verifiable proof of that when it comes to this title. I've had no problem playing it. I don't really like playing games, but I still play Fallout 4 and I do. I count it as one of those games I genuinely enjoy. And it's just different.
I like it too.
When we picked up Fallout 3, I remember there was a lot of backlash. People hearing Bethesda's doing Fallout 3, like,
that's
they don't know Fallout 3
to hear nowadays.
Sorry?
I said that's just unbelievable to hear nowadays, especially Fallout 3. Oh my god.
I know, but it's a lot of people like yourself, I know, played the originals and just like absolutely loved them. And there was things that Bethesda did right about them, things Bethesda did not do right about them. But there was a couple websites in particular, a very strong sense that like like this is the worst thing. They're going to destroy the franchise. And I think that when Fallout 3 came out, there were still plenty of people who were like, yes, it's ruined. It's ruined. But I think that it a lot of people may have grudgingly been like, actually, I can see the fallout in here. I can see it, and it's on many different levels. You know, it's in that like that piece of trash over there has a label that I'm familiar with, and this character is an homage to this character. And there was, I hope there was enough indication that Bethesda was looking and studying the originals, whether or not they got everything right. But I remember that there was so much vitriol on the web that for the first time ever as a company, we got a security guard. And we started having to bring IDs, you know, to open the doors and all that, to open more doors, just because there was actual death threats and bomb threats and that kind of thing with people, you know, and
wow.
that was a little bit of a weird time. I wasn't particularly worried about it, but it was just kind of weird to be like, I work at a game studio, and they're threatening to kill us because we're taking on something that they haven't even seen us do yet. But, you know, you just try to remember that a lot of these feelings come from passion, and it just shows you how much the Fallout franchise is treasured and valued by people for so many amazing reasons, because it's a really fantastic franchise. And I think, you know, people who don't like Fallout 3 or 4 could have very good reasons to not like them. They're not wrong at all.
You know,
but it was a very weird time. We were talking about people, you know, just players who just bring the hate, and I think that's one thing that the internet is definitely not devoid of. There's a lot of hate out there, but a lot of hate when it comes to games really comes from passions, and because they actually do really care about these things, and to them, these things, these franchises, these games are holy in many regards for a lot of games, because gaming is it's a very personal thing, unless you're playing multiplayer or whatever. But the whole idea is you are losing yourself. You are the wanderer, and this is from people's childhood. They played it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and they had their own adventures that nobody else was there for, and so it really makes it a very personal thing for them. And then when that personal thing gets pulled into the new world, like, you know, Transformers from back in the day, from my generation, now Michael Bay's playing with them, and Super Mutant Ninja Turtles used to be something, and now they're something different. And I look at the new Super Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I say, yeah, okay, like, there's a lot they're doing right, there's a lot they're doing wrong. Like, it does kill me a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
But it's going to happen because especially in the game community, nostalgia is paramount. I mean, people love nostalgia. I'm working on System Shock, the remake of the original System Shock. That is a pure nostalgia project, you know, and the gamers, we just completed the Kickstarter for that, and man, people came through because people love System Shock, and they're willing to put down money because they just want to see this brought back to life once more. They want to feel it again.
What's funny is I backed that based off of word of mouth. I've never played System Shock before. I was just, hey, I've heard this is good. I hear you're working on it. I heard that Chris Avalon's working on it. I heard a bunch of really great devs are working on it. I was like, all right, I'll pay. I'll give you the money.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Of course. Me and 21,000 other people. That's awesome. Yeah, but anyway, we should roll now into our general gaming discussion, which we kind of had already, but if anyone's playing any games that they'd like to talk about, rave about a little bit. Carrick, I know you said you recently beat a...
Abzu?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't talk about it, unfortunately, because it's Tuesday is the NDA, but it's like Journey, but underwater, basically.
Okay.
Austin Wintory, who we just did interview, the composer for like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Journey, Flow, a couple other games. He did the soundtrack, so yeah, that'll be exciting to see how people react to it. Headlander, I just beat for the third time.
Okay.
And
is that a game you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, Headlander's already out. It's it looks a little bit like, well, it's like, what are they calling those? Metroid. They're mixing the Metroidvania. Is that what the term is? Yeah. Yes. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but basically for me it's a platformer.
Yeah, what it usually when I hear Metroidvania, I think almost like you go to a certain part of the game, you get an item, and you can go back to a level that you were at earlier and unlock certain places that were originally blocked off.
Okay, so it's like No One Lives Forever and Buck Rogers mixed together. It reminds me of, do I have a map? It reminds me of the Deadly Tower Monsters, which is probably one of my favorite games in the last couple years. And that really shticky, like goofy B movie. And it's all done on color and sound, and it's fantastic. It is literally one of the best games I've played. It's been a really cool couple weeks because a lot of the games I've played have been awesome. This Is the Police surprised the hell out of me.
On that, yeah.
I turned that on and I was like, man, I'm into indie game. Like, I don't know of a genre I don't like unless it's, country music, but that's something different. And
hey, same.
I'll be sitting there and I turned on This Is the Police, and I remember it was like 6 hours later, and I was like, and it wasn't that, where did it go? Instead, I remembered every damn thing I did, which is weird. Like, it imprinted, and the gray, so I'm a big believer in morals and in games. I love that. And this one, you're a police chief who has 180 days to make $500,000 whatever way you want. You can be corrupt, or you can be a good guy. You can help out the gangs. You can not help out the gangs. You can kill your own cops by sending them into places to get killed, because that'll cause the gang leaders to give you more money because there won't be as many cops on the streets. You can do the craziest stuff in that game. Now, unfortunately, it got attacked by other reviewers because it is political. People will ask you to do racist stuff, but you don't have to. That's why I like it. I like choice. And if all choices were fun, it wouldn't be a very cool life anyway. I want those like nasty choices. And it's like a RTS almost, or a turn-based. It's weird. You're looking at a city, and it's a diorama basically, and you're pretending to be the police chief looking down on it, and you have to send cops to different events. And it reminds me of State of Decay, one of the games I talk about on the channel. Yeah, it's fantastic, but here's why I think State of Decay is fantastic, is because it continues to roll out gameplay systems up until the end. I can't tell you how many times I'd be playing State of Decay and go, wait, I can do something else? What? Like, I can use the radio tower to call in. There was always something new. Yeah. And in This Is the Police, right up until the end, there's like, you unlock a new person to talk to at City Hall who has and you're just constantly moving forward that cycle of like, nothing stopping me from doing something new. And it was so great to play. But other than that, unfortunately, you and I are both hoping for No Man's Sky. So I opened up time for the review. They told me I was going to get a copy, but I have a feeling that's gone the way of the dodo. I should just go to Reddit, right, and buy that copy. I think somebody's selling their copy for like $2,000.
What?
Oh, eBay, somebody bought a copy off eBay, posted it, and Sean Murray posted and said, could you please take this down? And he did. The Redditor was like,
I saw that. I was like, okay.
I'll take it down.
Like, you were kind of douchey, but like you took it back, so like...
Hey, he was a douchebag, just a floating douchebag. But what was cool about it is Sean, you saw him on the Twitter. Sean was like, please take this down. And I was waiting to see what the guy was going to do. And for him to take it down was pretty cool. Like, if you can get the game early, whatever. Like, I don't know how you did it. More power to you. But spoiling that kind of thing is a little bit like posting the entire starting of a movie online, and I wouldn't expect to see that.
The infamous big moment in episode 7 was ruined for me through a comment on a sports article, out of all things. So I managed to avoid, as a Fallout channel, transferring into Bethesda, but as a main Fallout channel during the hype train for that, I don't know how I avoided Fallout 4 spoilers, but yet I'm reading an article about the Mets, and I scroll down to see what people are talking about in the trade rumors, and I see someone say, the big thing that happened in episode 7. I'm just like, really? Okay, thanks, guy. Like, why would you write that here?
I'm lucky. I like spoilers. Because I like to play things. I love spoilers. I love to play things in reverse. So I love to get to the end and go, okay, how did I get here? So to me, that's how I review games too. So I like that. I sometimes will watch videos in reverse and sort of identify different points of how you get to that ending and if it all pays off. So I hate what you had to experience. That sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. But I mean, that's a unique way of thinking. I like that.
So that's it for me. But I'm telling you, No Man's Sky. I'm sitting here waiting. Yeah. Hopefully they're watching your channel.
Hopefully this far too. That would be really exciting. But for me, this week I've been playing. I kind of want to try that This Is the Police. That sounds interesting, especially based off your review. I definitely want to look into that. But I don't want to pick up too many games at once. So a game I got for my birthday that I'm finally just starting now, a month later, is on the Wii U. I haven't played my Wii U since Bayonetta 2, but I got that late. So yeah, it's been a while. But I had to say, whenever I start up, people will shit on the Wii U all they want, but anytime I personally start it up, it's because I'm playing a damn good game. So that's one thing worth mentioning. But lately, I've been playing, and I don't know if you guys play JRPGs at all. I know, Carrick, you do to some degree. I've been playing a Tokyo Mirage Sessions. That is a damn good game. For those who don't know out there, it is a crossover of Persona and Fire Emblem, two fantastic series. And what's great is they did the crossover well. It's its own thing, but you can see the inspirations. And I'm only about 6 hours in, but I did that in a night. So that's how much the game kind of got me by the hooks. And at first I thought, like, okay, am I like, is this the nostalgia of how much I love Persona, how much I love Fire Emblem driving me, but also something fresh? But it's the game on its own that's driving me. It's like, okay, I see the familiarities trickled about. That's exciting. Like instead of Persona, it's Performa. Okay, stuff like that. But the game itself, the story itself, so far is driving me, and that's what I appreciate about this game quite a bit. So that's what I've been playing recently. The only thing I haven't complained about is that I've gotten so accustomed to anytime I turn on my Wii U, you just have like the double screen. You have the gamepad, which has the game that you're playing right there, so you can plug in your headphones and listen to it. And you can't do that with Tokyo Mirage Sessions because they have like this whole unique cell phone mechanic on the gamepad, which is awesome. But you can't, because I love the music from those type of series, like the Fire Emblem, Persona, and I wanted to hear up close the music from Tokyo Mirage Sessions, but I can't. So unless I get like really long headphones for my TV. But yeah, that's what I've been playing this week. Who's up next? Who wants to dive in?
Bring it, Peyton.
Let's see. Let's not repeat my answer last week. I've been playing The Forest obsessively.
Really? That's an interesting choice.
Good game.
Is that out of early access yet, or whatever they're calling
it? No.
That's one of the few early access games I picked up. What was that? 2 years ago? 2015?
Yeah, I mean it's been around forever, but I mean they expanded the dev team a while ago, and I first picked it up just like I think it was on Wednesday when Obsidian had their multiplayer day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I played it in a long while, and wow, the improvements that they've made since the last time I played is absolutely insane. I built a boat and sailed around the island. And I'm pretty notorious for loving survival games with that emphasis on crafting. And there's just no real hand-holding in that game. It's very forgiving as far as death goes. I've managed to get killed like 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
I never lost the game.
Have you looked into We Happy Few then?
I haven't. I've been really wanting to pick it up based on the art style alone.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But I know nothing about
it. It's if you like survival games, based off what you're saying, because I've only picked up a handful of early access games I can think of, and the 2 that stick out are We Happy Few, which I got a code for from Microsoft, and the other was The Forest. And I was thinking of The Forest quite a bit while playing We Happy Few. The Forest and We Happy Few are completely different games, but like they have the same thirst, hunger, sleep, that type of stuff. While I think The Forest, now that I'm thinking back on it, has different survival mechanics. Like if you get wet, then you get cold. You have to warm up a fire, stuff like that. But if you like survival, then you like We Happy Few, because that was surprising that game was survival. Like I that's another game I played this week. I put a few hours into it, but I don't want to put too much into it because the narrative, like, it starts so strong, and I don't want to like play the game to the point where I'm sick of it, and then when it's officially done, just miss out on everything because I'll be like burnt out. But man, that game is I really like it so far.
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea that it had any survival aspect.
That's all it is. I should have mentioned that too, because I played about 15 hours of it, and it's I forgot to mention it. Yeah, it's very good.
Sounds like my kind of game, though.
It is.
Yeah. It's you go into these. I mean, like you said, the atmosphere and the environment, the art style. Oh my gosh, dude, I love it. It's very BioShock, Dishonored, to name a few, like that type of reminiscent feeling. And when you're going along the wastes, it's this poor, desolate area, and then you make your way to the other side of town.
Yeah.
Across the bridge, and it's this 180, and there's a whole different gameplay style where you need joy constantly to fit in, and then you sneak into people's houses and you start knocking them out while you're off the joy, so that you can conserve the joy inside you, like whether it's through the pill or the tap water, all that stuff. It's such
That's a
good
drug,
premise.
by the way, guys. Joy is a drug. I don't know
Yeah.
if he said it, but joy is a drug that you take, because
Yeah,
it's
I can
all a
imagine
V
that.
for Vendetta kind of like weird Orwellian thing. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. And it's social stealth, which is awesome. I mean, we've never really seen it before. I think Peyton would love it.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
do.
Because right when
That
you're off
sounds
the joy, they're like, "Hey, you all right?" Like people start noticing
And
that
the
something's off.
rainbow disappears from the sky. Like you can, when you take a pill, everybody's shiny, and you're like trotting along. You're like, "This is great," and there's a rainbow. And then as everything like sort of as you come down off the high, everything just starts to go to
Yeah.
crap. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's such a unique idea. It's really going to be, because you can tell they have a grip on what they're working with.
Yeah.
And I think early access, this is going to really help this game, because now that they know that people are like, all right, what you did with the game, you did right. It's just a matter of polish, I'd say. And I think personally the survival meters could use a little tweaking, where I felt like it was
Way too hard.
popping joy left and right, dude. Oh my god. But from what I played, I really enjoyed that game, and I would recommend it. It's a game that I said in my review personally that if you're not going to invest in it, then definitely keep your eye on it. But if that's up your alley, the survival elements, you'll like We Happy Few a lot then.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said that you watched a lot of playthroughs on Soma, so there's not a lot of narrative to be spoiled. So I'd say watch some playthrough videos on it, so you can get like a general idea of what you're getting into. But yeah, there's like crafting. I like the quests that pop up. There's a lot of points of interest, and there's lore to the game. It's interesting. It's going to be. I think it can be very good. Jonah, you been playing anything this week?
I think the most recent game that I had played was actually Shadow of Mordor, which I just didn't get around to playing before.
So is that, not to interrupt you, sorry, but is that the first time you're playing it?
It's the first time I'm playing it, yeah.
Oh boy.
It was just one of those Steam sales that I had bought, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. And what was it I had just finished? Oh, I just finished Doom 2 for the 4 for the second time.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, cool. I'm done with that. And then I was like, well, maybe I should just toy around with Shadow of Mordor, see what it's about. Really enjoyed it for a few days. It's gotten a little old now. The kind of the mechanics are getting a little old.
It's very Assassin's Creed reminiscent, right?
Very Assassin's Creed, and I can tell it's the same brawler mechanics as like Batman, which is fun. It's fun. I never actually played the Batman franchise, and I knew it was good. And so having now played a brawler, I'm like, yeah, it's so fun. But it's almost like it presents that same Bethesda issue where, for a long time, I would encounter new orc captains, and they'd face off and they'd say something interesting, and they'd be wearing some crazy shit I'd never seen before. And then you play it for a while, and you start seeing the same models pop up, different coloring, and you start seeing it more and more, and you start to realize that, for me, a lot of the magic disappears when I realize that I am in a world that will keep automating entertainment for me. This is why, after playing a lot of Torchlight 1 and 2, and then the most recent Diablo, I actually decided, you know what, I think I'm done forever with that kind of game, because at least once, you play it through once, and then what they always do is they go now go back to the beginning, and it's even harder, and you get even crazier stuff. And I realized at a certain point that, I think you had said that you're not a big fan of hooks at the end of a game.
It really depends what type it is when it comes to New Game Plus. It really does.
Right, yeah. But this to me was like the ultimate example of like, this will never end. This will always hook you, and with every playthrough it becomes more. The kind of the numbers and the math that drive the damage that you receive and give and all this stuff, it just ends up being kind of flattening out in these. I don't know. You lose a sense of adventure in some ways, and so after a while, with Shadow of Mordor, I've really enjoyed it. I've loved the art. I've loved the attention paid to the orcs themselves is really spectacular, and they're very funny and amusing and fun to fight. But I haven't really seen much new in it. It's not a gameplay that evolves really. It's a gameplay.
It's funny that you mentioned the sense of no end, because I actually popped the question on Twitter a week or two ago. It was just like, do you like games? Do you like the feeling of completing a game, or would you rather buy a game that has a ton of content that you probably won't end up finishing? A lot of people were saying that they would rather just get more bang for their buck. But for me, I've always been the gamer of, I like the satisfaction of beating a game. And an example that we talked about earlier would be like, for example, you take the Radiant quests in Fallout 4. They're never ending. You keep on going. You keep going back to these areas and getting stuff for the Brotherhood of Steel, for example. But then you look at Skyrim, for example, with the Thieves Guild, which you mentioned, where you keep doing these Radiant quests, but eventually there's this end point where it's like, okay, we've restored the Thieves Guild to their former glory. And I thought that was really cool. And it made me feel a sense of completion, like, okay, I'm not just endlessly looping the fun. It's always going to be there. I think that sense of completion is important. And
yeah,
I want to know
accomplishment, right?
Do you agree with that, or do you think there's like a certain point where it's like, why not throw in a bunch more, or would you rather condense a game, have it be more focused, but still give that completion sense? Like, it's a hard balance to draw, and it depends, I guess, on what series and what game you're passionate about, really, as well.
A game like Skyrim, because there are just many discrete quests to find, and there's always a unique sword you can't find anywhere else on this one quest in this one temple.
Yep.
To me, that's the kind of game that you can finish the game at the end and then just kind of keep playing, knowing that you saved this world, but you're still meeting new people, you're still encountering new places that maybe were locked before, and finding new stuff. And so, yeah, at a certain point, of course, the scenes are going to split and people are going to see kind of inside and see the mechanics. Mm-hmm. To me, it's the mechanics of games like Diablo. It's so ironic because what gives it its strength, which is its kind of scalability and its evolution of, as you progress through the game, you get so much stronger and you face stronger things. But once it becomes so naked that you're just kind of running the same loop again and again, and you're actually not finding every time for me with those problems with those games is that every time I kill somebody, and it does that really quick invisible dice roll to see, what did he win by killing this level 20 something or other. If there's not enough new stuff after a while, I start to feel like it's all hollow, and I'm playing. It reminds me that I am playing in a metal machine contraption.
A spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm playing in a spreadsheet.
That's exactly right.
Handcrafted game.
Yeah.
Well said. No.
Interesting.
But yeah, so I've been feeling that a little bit with Shadow of Mordor, but I can't give it too much trouble because at the same time I played it in some ways like I would play a Bethesda game, which is that I just ran around having fun, mm-hmm. not really going after the main quest. And so by the time it came time for me to be like, all right, I'm getting a little bored, I'm going to go check out the main quest. And then the main quest was a series of do this and do this and do this, which is all continuation of the same kind of gameplay. At this point, I'm kind of like, you know what? It is a good game. They did a really good job, but I think I'm not going to play it anymore.
Yeah. 2014, that came out in 2014. That was an interesting year for gaming because Shadow of Mordor got a lot of Game of the Year awards. So did Dragon Age Inquisition. Like, both those games I thought were good, but not games that should be set as an example for Game of the Year.
Yeah.
That's just me personally. So, when people say, like, I'm playing Shadow of Mordor, I'm always, like, really curious to hear their thoughts because I remember seeing time after time, they're like, yeah, Shadow of Mordor, Game of the Year. And I'm like, it was a very good game. It was fun, but I wouldn't say that's the example of, like, this was the definitive best thing I played this entire year.
Right.
So, it's always interesting to hear people's thoughts on that game. Any gaming news pop out to anyone this week that they'd like to talk about?
I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about BioWare shutting off their forums. Is that not the awesomest thing in the world? Like, we were talking about social media, and BioWare's like, screw social media, and they just shut off their forums, and they'll close them completely in 2 months, I think. But right now they'll be an archive for 2 months, and they're just going to Facebook and Twitter, and they're just like, yeah, you can get a hold of us on Facebook and shit. And so their entire forum, and I was on their forums all the time. Mass Effects, talking about mods, all that stuff. All that's completely being truncated. It's going to go in the archive, and then I think they said in 2 months it's shutting down. The only one that's going to stay running is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Online, because, of course, MMO, that makes sense. But I'd like to know what Jonah thinks of that as somebody who worked in development. Like, if Bethesda, if you guys were talking, what would you do if Todd Howard came in and he's like, hey, guys, got an idea. Let's shut off half of the way we communicate with people. I mean, how does that decision get made? I don't know.
That's funny. I didn't know. Did they say why they wanted to do that?
They said that social media has sort of taken over for forums. And what's funny is a lot of the people that were on the forum were like, yeah, forums are old. And I'm all, dude, you're on a forum. You just responded to the news on a forum. Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah.
That's so funny. I first of all, I can't see Todd Howard ever saying that.
Yeah, I didn't think
I think that he really understands that, I mean, Bethesda, when I joined, Morrowind had just gone gold, a year before. No, 2 years before or something. And so I was hired right before Oblivion's release because they knew Oblivion was going to be good because it had the reception from Morrowind, and they wanted to expand their team. So that's how I kind of I squeaked in at that time. But they are very aware of where they came from. They're an old company. They're not new. And so much of their support comes from these people who love to hang out in forums and love to have discussions. And, for me, I wouldn't even equate so much a forum as the place to meet with developers so much as it's a place for people who love the game to talk about the game.
Exactly.
And social media, I was never much for social media. And then these days, I'm going off on my own. I'm a freelancer. I have all these individual things that I'm doing. And most importantly for me right now is I've been writing this novel and I really want to get the word out. So I realized at the beginning of this process that I needed to actually have a name. I needed people to know who I was. And so, I got to get on social media now. I got to that's what you're supposed to do. Get out there, show your face, show your work, And so I've become a slave to social media in these intervening years in a way that I was never while I worked at Bethesda. And what I've learned and what I feel about it is that social media is very fleeting. It's very transient. It's extremely
reactive.
It's extremely reactive, and within 5 minutes of something happening, there's 17,000 memes already circulating. But what it creates is actually it's a world of 140 characters or less. Twitter is, but then also social media in general. It's all very quick responses. And forums, people can really talk about things.
Yeah.
And people can really geek out about things, and they can talk about what they liked and why they liked it, and what they hated and why they hated it, and they can really compare and contrast. And obviously, forums, the trolls love forums. They swarm to forums, but they swarm to social media too. Everywhere you go, there's gonna be trolls. But I think that's why I don't think that I could ever imagine Todd Howard saying, "Let's shut this down."
Yeah.
Because he knows where this love started, and he knows where the core of the lovers of these games hang out. Because Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 3, these are blockbuster successes, and I think part of why a lot of people, the things that were compromised from Fallout 1 and 2 to Fallout 3 and 4, i.e. the depth of story and character and progression that I know you guys here have a profound love for, and that I think a lot of people could argue was shortchanged in this kind of transition to a more action-packed, more sandboxy landscape. It's precisely crap, I lost my train of thought. Those people, those transitions change the game field so that Fallout is now a name that your aunt has heard about. You know what I mean? Because of that transition. But so it has more fans than ever. But the diest hard fans that you can find you're going to find them in forums.
Yeah.
And that's where they live. And I feel like taking away their home, I don't know, it feels, why would you do that? That's their home.
They'll go to 4chan and NeoGAF, great.
Right.
That's exactly what I was thinking, though, is that, when I talked to Todd, I was asking him about feedback and stuff like that, and he's like, we really don't go, for example, to YouTube comments, because usually you'll see people saying asshat kind of things to get the upvote, regardless of their beliefs. And so I'm thinking that if I'm a developer and you have, forums are dying out, I'd keep that forum, because that means that the people who are going there are diehard enough to make their voice heard on an exclusive platform that has the lowest chance of being heard there, right? And so I think it's silly, but I mean, I hate to say it, but I think BioWare's just been doing silly things for a while now. That's just me. I love them. I've said this on your podcast, Carrick, that they've made my favorite game ever made.
Me too. Yeah.
So
multiple ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this Mass Effect?
For me, it's actually KOTOR,
Same.
and then Mass Effect after that, but KOTOR, I think I played over 200. I'm sure I played over 200 times easily because I play it at least 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah, it's
and
just such a
many times that first year.
Yeah, and when you look at that, for me, it's probably like KOTOR and Dragon Age Origins for them.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and so those are just amazing games. And you look at these decisions, like you look at how. And you opened my eyes completely, Carrick, when you were like, yeah, there were MMO directors behind,
Dragon Age Inquisition? Yeah, a lot of people didn't realize that.
Yeah, I was like, that explains the MMO, like, quests that they gave you. And then you have this decision, and it's just like, yeah, it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot progressively, but everyone's allowing you to do it. It's like people should be speaking out and being like, hey, BioWare, like, we love you a lot. Like, please don't do this.
Yeah.
That's crazy news. For me, the news I wanted to talk about and get your thoughts on was the recent, I made a video about it, was the Marvel Ultimate Alliance remaster fiasco that's been going on where, the port was really, really poorly handled on the PC. Doesn't support modern 1080p monitors. For example, was that they have the power bar, because in Marvel Ultimate Alliance you have 4 powers you can use and assign a hotkey, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 on a PC. But they also made the jump button 3. So you're jumping, but you're doing your powers at the same time. So it makes no sense. And on top of that, missing content from the DLC, which I don't know how that one managed to carry over. The upgrades are minimum, and they were charging $60 for the bundle or $40 each. And it was a poorly handled remaster. Now they are updating it. The director of Marvel Games said that they're going to be adding the DLC. They fixed the Xbox achievements were broken. They just fixed those. So that's always wonderful, but they're going to be adding all these updates to something that should have been ready to go off the start and could have really sparked a discussion and love about Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which I think was a very popular series. I think it was a series that still has a future, especially if you're Marvel and you're looking at this response, you wonder who's to blame, and if they're going to look at it intelligently and go, okay, Activision didn't handle this well. Or are they going to go, oh, people don't really like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and then say, well, we're not going to do a third one, or we're not going to reboot the series?
So did you play them?
Mm-hmm.
So I beat them. I've beat them both. They're terrible remasters, but I think that we do need to look at the company and assume that I don't think it'll be a Team Bondi issue like LA Noire, but they're obviously, when a company says 3 days prior that they're suddenly releasing 2 remasters. They said nothing prior to that. So you have 3 days. Bethesda and Microsoft are fast with their releases, 6 months, 8 months, right? They announce, I think Fallout, how long did Fallout 4 have?
5.
For its 5 months. That's fast for a lot of people. This is 3 days. Usually what that indicates is there's a problem in the company. And
Really?
especially, when I talk to a lot of developers, they'll be like, dude, there's stuff that happens. Like whether that team is out of money and it's time to move on to the next thing, whatever may occur, or money is removed from one project, Dennis Dyack. I'm just joking. Sorry, he's known for moving money around. But certain companies have multiple IPs and then they move that money around, whether they're supposed to do that or not. It does seem to me that any game that has a 3-day announcement has a problem.
Really?
So I'm not too. I mean, have you ever heard of a 3-day announcement for a massive game?
The reason I thought it was a 3-day thing was more of a because there were trademark release rumors and all that type of stuff, where I thought that it was more so a okay, this is a 10-year-old franchise, so let's just spring it out there, and for anyone who cares, they'll pick it up.
I would say it could be, but when you see this many issues, for example, you were talking about Control. When I press A and it actually is X, and when I press Y and it's B, that's a problem with the game inherently. Mm-hmm. No test, because I worked in test. Test isn't going to allow that to go through. The first thing they're going to do is write their notes down. Jonah was just talking about how they were testing, in Bethesda. You have all these different people testing. You're going to write those notes, and you're going to go tell somebody, guy, the button you press is wrong. Yeah. That's the basic. That's basic.
Sure.
At Sega, like they were like, wait, what? We can't ship that. A can't be X. Like you can't. That's impossible. So I think that something obviously happened. Too many weird things have occurred in a small period of time for us to say this is normal.
True.
And I'm not in any way giving them an out, by the way, because they're too expensive too. Above everything else, $40 a piece for 2 10-year games that have not been adjusted or up-resed or retextured or new meshes. All that has not happened.
That is ridiculous.
$40, man. That's for a poor
Especially,
consumer.
you
That
know,
is a lot of money.
The timing is fantastic because I said in the video that I made that I've been playing. I played and beat Resident Evil 5 HD, and that was a game that had the 1080p upres that you could see was noticeable. You had the 60 FPS, all the DLC, some new costumes, and it was $20.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you got something double the price.
It's missing the DLC, and it's $40. Yeah.
It's like, okay, Activision. Well, you know, and the prices. I wouldn't argue as much if they had the proper adjustments made. If I could see a noticeable difference, if the game worked properly, you know, or I shouldn't say if it worked properly. It's just, it's a mess. That's what it is. There's just a lot of little things scattered about that are just ruining the image and the whole product.
Well, I have a question. Has anybody ever turned on a game and pressed a button and had it be another button? Like, is that not the most basic of test kind of situations in the world?
Like, okay, is X jump? Oh no, it's attack. Oh well.
Yeah. Oh well.
We'll just leave it.
Yeah.
That was my news bit. I don't know if you guys, Jonah, Peyton, have any piece of gaming news that caught your eye that you'd like to toss out into the fray.
Not really. I mean, you know, just System Shock getting money.
Yeah, that's
was
awesome.
definitely the highlight of my week. But besides that, no.
Awesome. No, that's great to hear though, man. I'm happy for you because that. Oh, I can't wait because it's gonna be fresh for me because like I haven't.
Jonah, I have a question about it.
Yeah.
Is it because I don't know about it? I mean, I know about it, but I haven't even gone to the Kickstarter. Is it just System Shock 1? And what is it? It's a redo. What are you guys doing? If you can just break it down a little bit.
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, it's not a sequel. It's it's like think of it as a facelift.
Okay.
Think about how if somebody, you know how for Doom 4 they did. This is my Wacom pen. This is not a vaporizer. Everyone always thinks it's a vaporizer, but I'm just chewing on my Wacom pen. So they're taking the original game, all the old levels. They're actually even ripping the geometry right out of those levels and giving them new textures. You know, before those textures might have been 24 by 24 pixels, and now 2048 by 2048, and they're a whole new kind of set of graphics. The world art is spectacular. The movement is fluid in some of the same ways that Doom 4. That's what it's showed for, is fluid motion, feeling like you actually inhabit a body that has certain rules but is as fluid as possible. The monsters all have the same number of hit points as they did in the original, and they move towards you at generally the same speed and attack at generally the same rate. But now I'm making them, and I'm making them in full 3D, and we're making them ultra detailed resolutions. Awesome. So it's a lot of that stuff where basically the whole goal is to take this franchise that people people cared about as much as they cared about Fallout, for instance, where it really changed everything and it presented with something totally new. And they're trying to is give it back to them and not have them experience it being like, oh man, I remember this being like a lot cooler,
right?
Which is how you would feel if you just went back and put in your old disc. You'd be like, wow, in my head this looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. The whole goal here is to give this game back to people and have it be completely recognizable, so that they know where all the items and the secrets are and all that. They can find it all, except that now it's awe-inspiring to look at, and now there's a window here where there wasn't, and you can look at and see the moons of Saturn and
awesome
that kind of thing. So that's the whole idea. And so the Kickstarter was basically for, we get the old voice actors and get new voice actors, so they can do all the same audio recordings they did in the previous ones, plus new ones. Shodan says all the things she did before, plus new things. We got the same actress who played Shodan. So that's the idea. So that's
awesome.
The whole concept. I think it's a great idea, and I think that relative to what a lot of sequels might be and remakes, relative to all that, it's quite cheap, because essentially you're just putting a facelift on an old game, which means that you don't have to pioneer a tremendous number of new systems. You don't have to create that many new meshes. You're kind of doing the same thing. I think that once this goes through and once this is seen as a success that it's going to be, you guys should play the demo, by the way, if you're interested. It's the first level of the game. I think we're going to see it a lot more. I think we're going to see a lot more retro games that inspire that kind of love and nostalgia that we've been talking so much about, overhauled and given just with minor changes, but with a whole new interface and a whole new feel.
Is it Unreal or Unity, or which engine is it? Or you guys do? Is it the old engine? I mean,
it's no. It's
no. Okay,
it's Unity, but there's been some, but that might change.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then I'll go check it out after the thing. I knew there was a demo, and I just never got a chance, and everybody's been talking about it. One of my favorite games of all time. So
I think. Oh, well, in that case, I really think you should check it out, because I think that walking around in that first level, I think you're gonna be like, oh yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
That's awesome. It's immediately recognizable from when you look at the geometry and the layout.
Yeah, right.
It is old school. It's old school.
Yeah, very cool.
Stuff. Cool. All right, so now it's on to fan questions, which are all directed at Mr. Jonah. So if you want to pick out a few, I'll go on my phone right now and just skim through some of them. But if you have any of them that because I know you responded to a few tweets, like I said, and we're like, I like this one. This might be one we want to pick out.
Sure.
Then by all means, and answer at your own comfortability. If there's anything you hear that you're like, I don't feel comfortable answering that, then by all means pass on that. That's totally all right. Let's see here. I'm gonna go through your responses to these because I know there's a couple of them.
Yeah, we were laughing beforehand about, I think you would tweet it out to everybody, and then I got a slew of questions out of the blue. But I'm all about it. So yeah, these were all over Twitter. I'm at Jonah Lobe on Twitter for those who are interested. So people were asking questions like, where did you get inspiration for the armor designs?
Yeah.
Was one by Cole Wiley. Obviously, I did not design a lot of these. They were designed by me, but then a lot of them were created by me with plenty of artistic license. You definitely have to ask the concept artist for that, because the amount of inspiration that goes into this is pretty tremendous. Especially when we're referencing Fallout. Fallout is, because it takes place in what is recognizably the world that we have once known. There's so many inspirations from old movies and from old comic books to pull from, and with a lot of the armor designs, a lot of the armors in a post-apocalyptic world like that are retrofitted and made of different pieces, and so if you really want to see where a lot of the inspiration from that came from, you should check out the artwork by a concept artist named Adam Adamowicz, who I wrote an article about on Kotaku several months ago. It's about creativity and it's about him. He was great, but I won't get into it. But he did pass away, and they put all of his concept art from Skyrim and from Fallout 3 up online. So thousands and thousands of illustrations. And if you want to see in pure inspiration and just innumerable numbers of combinations of ideas, you should check out this guy's work. It's Adam Adamowicz is his name, and they just have thousands of pictures up. And so if you want to see pure, unfiltered creativity, check him out. He's good.
I read a comment that was pretty interesting. He naturally asked, did you make art for any of the locations in Fallout 3 or 4? And if so, what was your favorite? This comes from Boss Halo 219.
Boss Halo. So I was primarily a character artist, so I did monsters. Monsters were my specialty. So I made... For Fallout 4, I made like the Deathclaws, the Mirelurk Kings, the Mole Rats, the Mirelurks, the Bloodbugs, and the Super Mutants.
Bloodbugs.
And so I do mostly character stuff. I did do some architectural work before I left. The idea was that I was brought on fairly early on, which is why even though I left Bethesda 3.5 years ago, I still got to work on Fallout for 9 months because I was brought on a little earlier. So I was expected to do a couple objects, a couple architectural things, a couple outfits and monsters to kind of, working very closely with Istvan, who was the art director. It was my goal was to try to help him establish the art direction going forward. So there was some giant chrome statues that I can't remember what museum you find them in, but there's some quest where they're all over the walls. I did this kind of Metropolis style metal woman, kind of like in kind of like a it almost looks it's like half like a time capsule thing and half like something you'd be buried in, and which is kind of the idea, right? These multiple ideas. So, but I couldn't tell you exactly where they were.
Okay.
There are bits of art that have been scattered throughout the world. So they're giant aluminum statues, basically. So if you see a big Art Deco kind of face, Fallout. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Fallout 4 face architecture. Faces in the architecture is one thing that they did that is kind of has run throughout the franchise.
I remember that in Fallout 3.
And in Fallout 3 as well. And I did one for Fallout 3. I did this like really mean looking old man who I was thinking like some old corrupt senator who was, jingoistic in the extreme or whatever. I can't find any of the images, but so I've done a couple. But if ever you see a giant aluminum statue, either one that looks like the Metropolis woman or a face that is like a giant Grecian techno monstrosity, that one's mine. But
Cool.
other than that, I was pure character stuff.
Good stuff. Another question that Peyton pointed out to me that we should definitely ask is from my friend Rob, or Vault of Daedalus. And he said, please ask this. He begged. He said, how hard is retaining consistency in art style, especially textures, with so many artists, and how is it done? Very, very deep question, I'd say.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, what's up, Vault of Daedalus? I know you. I've seen you on Twitter. I've seen you about.
Memes.
How do you maintain consistency artistically? It's not easy. I think that actually with Fallout 4, that was the first time that we had been presented with, when entering the game, a bunch of color swatches of what we should be sampling from. This is the color of all the dirt in the world. This is the color of steel. This is the color of copper. This is the color of bronze. Here are some techniques that I've been pioneering. Not me. This is Istvan, the art director, for creating art. Here's the art style. We're going for a more simplistic, not so noisy, kind of like Fallout 3 had a lot more grit and noise on the textures, and what you got was a relatively muddy palette. Fallout 4 was much more about still creating a world just as full of garbage and trash, but make it more elegant, more smooth, with more natural beauty and swatches of light, color. So that was a real concerted effort. And so I think a lot of that day-to-day effort comes down to maybe the art director walking from desk to desk, giving feedback. I know for something like Skyrim, there was also a lot of cultural references that were given to us, mainly the Vikings, but there were lots of different possibilities for sources that we could turn to, and a lot of those come from similar historical backdrops and all that. So even though it's many different artists working on things, they can look to real reference for help. I don't think, if I'm totally honest, I don't think Bethesda is the best at consolidating a single art style. When you look at a game like Dishonored, for instance, or Doom 4, or actually for that matter, XCOM 2, you have a very distinct visual style, and it's really beautiful. With Dishonored, it's totally painterly. It's almost like you're walking through an oil painting, right? With XCOM 2, it's very clean, straight lines, these swatches of brilliant color. Doom 4, there's this uniform level of detail, and the metal, the stone, the demon skin, it's all very like tactile. Bethesda does a lot of amazing things, and Bethesda has some amazing art. But I don't think that we have concentrated as hard as other companies on developing a unique Bethesda style. A lot of what people determine as a style is unfortunately dictated by maybe the limits of the engine, with the lighting and all that. So what when you see a screenshot of a Bethesda game, you can see it. That's a Bethesda game, not because of a particular art style, but because of the way it looks. There's a very particular look on it, and we can go on and debate the merits and the pros and cons of that particular engine. But I think most people head for kind of a reality plus, which is I think kind of what I do is kind of like epic reality. That's kind of why I liked. I'm a big fan of fantasy in general, and so Skyrim was really fun because I could go this, it's realistic, but it's a little cooler and a little slicker than realism. So it's nothing against them at all. And actually, I think that these are both worlds where reality, where we're kind of are selling reality, not. These are not cartoon worlds when we're talking about the Elder Scrolls or Fallout. We're talking about, franchises that really try to sell you on this being a real world. It's not, you look at JRPGs, for instance, and a lot of them have this very different feel to them, and the colors are different, and the clothing is totally impractical, and they have all the creatures have a very distinct and magical look, and it can be very beautiful, but it's not reality. It is specifically a very alternate reality in many ways. But I think that Bethesda doesn't always try to do that. So that's my very long-winded answer.
Interesting. That's a good answer for a big question. One other thing, since you were talking about specific creatures and creation, all that stuff, is that the mouthful of a name, Mad220023, says, is there a favorite thing that you've created for Fallout or Elder Scrolls? I know this is a general question that you probably get a lot, but I'm sure people are interested to hear your answer. If you even have a favorite, a lot of people, I know this is a totally different spectrum, mind you, but a lot of people are like, do you have a favorite video you've made? And I'm just like, I kind of just go video at a time, so I'm interested to see if you have an answer to that.
I think my favorites in each game, Fallout 3, I would say the feral ghouls I love the best. Skyrim, I would say maybe Alduin.
Okay.
May have been my personal favorite, and then for Fallout 4, probably the Deathclaws and probably the Super Mutants as well. I think the Super Mutants get a lot less. I look on like DeviantArt to see people do fan art of these monsters and all that because I'm a narcissist and I want to see, I want that payoff. But Deathclaws get a ton of love. People don't really love the Super Mutants don't really seem to inspire anybody, but I just love those two creations. So those are probably my all-time. Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to everything you do. It was a personal goal and one that a lot of people in the character art team pursued. There was a lot of talent in the character art team, and while I was there, we got a lot more people, and everybody who came along presented new abilities and prowess that I hadn't seen before that really pushed me. I kind of feel like at a point early at the beginning of Skyrim, I felt like I was kind of plateauing learning wise, and then we started hiring more people, and there was so much ability that it was really spectacular. But what we ended up doing is whatever you do drives on the next person to try to do better than you. And so I think that for us, it's there was so much competition, friendly competition, and it never felt like we were just slogging through these things. It really felt like we were trying to outdo one another, and the player won. So yeah, those are my favorites, and that's why.
Cool. On the other end of the spectrum, I see you already have an answer for it, but I'm sure you'll go into more detail because this isn't Twitter. Rodney asks, are there any designs that you wish you could go back and change? Yep.
And what's up, Rodney? And I definitely mentioned the Yaogwai. The Yaogwai from Fallout 3, I never done, or not that I never done, but I didn't have that much experience yet overall in character creation, and the only other four-legged thing I'd made was the skeletal hounds from the Shivering Isles, or one of the expansions for Oblivion, and it was a monster that I had big hopes for, and I couldn't pull off right. And then I had the same thing happen with the Yaogwai. I had big hopes for the Yaogwai, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it right. And then, to me, it's just offensive to look at. So yeah, but you're gonna have a couple of those.
It's cool that you're able to answer those type of questions and not feel, I guess for lack of better words, embarrassed about it, because that's interesting though. How about I'm the Dozer asks, and you let me know if I'm firing too many at you.
Right.
I'm the Dozer asks, what was the most challenging design you had to create?
Well, the dragons for Fallout definitely took a long time. There's a lot of considerations. There's programmers and animators to please, and there's visions, there's alternate visions. To create the dragons, I was given over 32 different drawings of that they come up with. And they were like, yeah, we like the body on this one and the head on this one and the coloring here and the personality here. So combining that was hard, but it was even more hard than usual because because there were so many considerations to take into mind. So, for instance, the neck couldn't be as long as it was in the concept because when you're fighting this thing, the neck is too long. It just looks like you're fighting a giant head, and the body's like 50 miles away from you. So it doesn't quite work out in the same way. So technically that was quite difficult. I think probably one of the most arduous tasks I've undertook was actually after I left Bethesda. I did a contract monster for Bethesda, the Mirelurk King, and the Mirelurk King I put a lot of effort into it. I left Bethesda and I was doing a lot of illustration and a lot of writing, and neither of these things were things I was familiar with. And so when the opportunity came to do what I was good at, I was like, oh, I'm going to dive in all the way. And I think I went a little overboard in many.
You did a
different
fantastic
ways.
job with Mirelurk King, if I'm honest.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There was things I for some reason it didn't feel great going into it, even though I did put a lot of effort into it. There were so many details on him. There's so many like membranes and fins and all that from a technical standpoint, just putting them together was sucky. Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe that's all the questions we have, just because the rest are stupid, like describe your toaster, if you want to answer that.
I have a toaster oven. I don't have a toaster.
Oh, snap. All
Yeah.
right.
Curveball. People are asking the real questions right now on Twitter.
Yeah, holy crap, man. But anyway, that'll wrap up the podcast unless anyone has any final thoughts they want to get out there. Any questions? No?
Not from me. I've had a great time. I wanted to thank your audience for listening in and for loving Fallout.
Wow, of course. They're going to enjoy this quite a bit. And thank you guys, all three of you, for coming on. I really appreciate it, especially when I have to run this show on my own sometimes. It's definitely hard because you got to do all the scripting and everything. So thank you guys for coming on and making time for this as well. It's always great. And you guys are always welcome back on. Now, normally what we do is have the guest end the podcast, as Peyton, you're well aware of. But I'm not going to do that this time because we have multiple guests. So that would be like almost, picking your favorite child or something along those lines. So I'm not going to do that to you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening to episode 69 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast. Once again, Jonah, Carrick, and Peyton, thank you guys so much for coming out and joining us for this lovely episode. This is actually one of our longest ones in quite a while. So this is a special one, and I think a lot of the long-term listeners are going to enjoy it. But nonetheless, thank you guys for listening this far. Be sure to check out all the stuff I have linked for each of these fantastic gentlemen in the description section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.
It was a pleasure.
So, thanks.
Oh, wait. Yeah, we're going to have to wait a second because my mouse just died. So, hold on.
All right.
Yeah, the episode.
Let's go. Let's take over.
Okay.
The episode is still running.
Well, speaking of social media, I'm gonna be a quick social media whore real quick because I've been told by many people that I really have to just keep pounding the self-promotion thing. But I'm on Twitter.
Your handle's been on screen the whole.
Well, there you go.
I got you.
That's all I had to say. Come by my stream. Say hi.
All right. Cool.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Follow all these wonderful gentlemen. Check out all their amazing content.
And if you're not following Peyton on Twitch, and if you want to see amazing artwork done on the regular, this guy's got immense talent.
Thank you, Jonah.
For real, yeah. All three of you guys, talented as fuck.
I'm glad we could finally get you on here.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, you reached out to me. I was like, you want to come on my show? Okay.
I saw that and I was like, why hasn't it happened? It's been like a week.
Yeah, well, thank
Whatever
you
you want. This is fun, man. I love answering questions, and you guys think a lot about lots of different games, and you think about the art form of game, and you guys know what you're talking about. So it's a real pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Cool. My mouse works this time, so I think I'm gonna close down the episode for real this time. Once again, thank you everyone for joining, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Take care.
Bye.